Brilliant. So, as we saw in our Bible story this morning, Jesus' friends were so busy and so distracted by everything that was going on in their lives that they didn't even realize Jesus was walking along with them. They were so focused on everything else that they failed to recognize their surroundings. They were distracted because they were thinking about everything that had happened that week. Jesus had died, completely upsetting all their ideas of how things were meant to be. They were confused because they didn't know what to do next. All their plans for the future had fallen apart. And they were busy because they needed to get somewhere. They were on a journey. They had somewhere to be, and they had to be there on time. Who this week has felt distracted, confused, or busy? Can I see a show of hands? Have you felt distracted, confused, or busy this week? I'm seeing some high hands. I'm seeing some low hands. Yeah, me too, definitely. There's definitely been a few points when that's been me. Sometimes there's so much going on that I don't realize Jesus is walking with me until I stop and look back at the end of my week. And suddenly I start to see all the places where actually Jesus was there the whole time, but I was so busy I couldn't even realize. Jesus' friends didn't recognize him until they stopped and made time to sit down and eat together. It's when they made space to have dinner, when they let go of some of their busyness and let themselves relax a little bit, when they shared some bread together and had food. That was when they recognized Jesus was with them. It's as though they suddenly put on a pair of glasses and they could see everything all the more clearly. I know, it's a great look. You may have some glasses on or around near your chairs. If you want to put them on, you can. Hopefully, when you put them on and look at me, suddenly you see me in full 3D. Or did you already see me in 3D? Oh, never mind. Anyway, you've got your glasses. That's all that matters. If you haven't got glasses, you can imagine seeing me in 3D. It's quite special. It can be exactly the same for us as it was for Jesus' friends. We can be so busy that we don't take the time to recognize where Jesus is at work in our lives. But when we choose to stop and make a little space, when we come together and spend time together, when we open up to each other enough to eat a meal together, when we're vulnerable enough to share that time together over food, then we start to recognize Jesus amongst us. As we talk together and hear how Jesus has been working in people's lives, we start to recognize how he is working in our lives. That's why we come together for connect time between the services. Because as we chat and have community, we start to recognize where Jesus was at work in other people's lives, and suddenly we realize, oh, maybe he was at work in my life, and we start to hear stories of what Jesus has been doing, and we get excited about what we could see him do this coming week. That's why we come together. That's why we have food together. Just like the disciples, it's like we suddenly recognize that Jesus has been there the whole time. It's as though we put on a pair of glasses and we can see things clearly. So let's have a go at that right now. We are going to stop, we are going to make some space, and we are going to chat about the weeks we've had. If you have come as a family, I would love it if you could gather as a family. If you have not come as a family, I would love it if you could gather with the people either side of you and just spend a moment chatting. I've got some questions to help us just sort of think through our weeks and where we've seen God. And Vicky, I would love it if you could just come up and chat with me, because otherwise it's a bit weird if I'm telling you all to chat and I'm just stood up here by myself looking and watching you. That's just a bit strange. So we're going to have a chat. You're not going to hear us. Our microphones will be off. You can all chat. So turn into your families. Turn around with the people next to you. And the first thing, and if you've got some glasses, hopefully you've also got some pens, and you can be writing down some of the things that you and those around you say on the glasses after you've chatted. But the first thing I would love, and this is for everyone to join in with, the first thing I'd love is if you turn to the people around you and you chat about, who is it that has made you smile this week? Who is it that's made you smile this week? Hopefully you've had a minute to chat about who it was that made you smile this week. The next thing I'd love if you could briefly share with each other. What is it that has got you excited this week? What is it that's made you stop and go, oh wow, that's so great? Maybe it's something you've seen outside in nature. Maybe it's a situation that you found yourself in or an activity you took part in. But what is it that has got you excited this week? Turn together and just chat for a second. Okay, and I think last one. Where have you seen a prayer answered this week? Or maybe, where do you think Jesus has helped you even though actually you didn't pray about it? Which, honestly, Jesus helps us regardless of whether we pray. But maybe you've seen a prayer answered, or maybe you didn't pray about it, but as you look back, you're like, oh, I think Jesus helped me there. I'd love it if we could just for a minute chat to those around us. Wonderful. We are going to come back together now, so draw your conversations to a close. Hopefully that was just the moment, just to start opening up to each other, being a little bit vulnerable, being family and community. And hopefully I can see some people have been writing on their glasses. Vicky and I were just chatting, and we were saying so often things happen and then we forget about them. And that's why we write things down, because actually suddenly we've got a record of it and we can look back and go, oh yes, Jesus did that. That's so good. Vicky and I were just sharing some of the ways which we have smiled and seen Jesus at work this week. And I was saying especially that with Anna, my daughter, absolutely loved just playing with her this week. Just the joy that comes out when she plays and just her creativity and her imagination. And I started to see something of Jesus in that. And we did this at the 9:15, the service before this as well. And someone was saying that the person that made them smile this week was a friend, because they went to a party and they were a little bit unsure and a little bit nervous. But a friend came over, took their hand, brought them in, and helped them to just join in with everybody without being scared. I thought, what an amazing way to see Jesus in your week, in a friend coming over and including you in what's going on. So that's absolutely brilliant. When we stop, we can recognize Jesus, and we can recognize that he is present and at work in everything we do. He's there in the times when we laugh and have fun. He's enjoying our happiness with us. The times when we cry, he's there, understanding what we go through because he went through it himself, and comforting us because he wants to hold us in his arms when we're upset. And when we're stressed, he's there offering us his peace. He's offering us his peace and his wisdom on how to move on. We can know Jesus with us in every situation, but it's often when we stop, when we come together as a family, when we eat together, that we recognize the points that we missed Jesus was with us. It's when we come together and we open up. The more we do this, the more we learn to see Jesus in the moment. Hopefully your glasses now have some words on them of times when actually Jesus was in your week and you can start to recognize him. So now if you put your glasses on, suddenly your outlook has changed. You're now looking through all the ways that you've recognized Jesus. You're looking at the same things, but you're seeing them in the light of everything that Jesus has already done. And because you're wearing your glasses of what Jesus has done last week, when you start to look ahead at this week, you can start to see the ways in which he might be at work, the things that he might do. So let's look through that lens of what Jesus has done at what Jesus could do next. Today is the last in our Come and Eat series, and it summarizes the series quite nicely. When we gather as a community, we recognize Jesus. That's what it is. When we gather as a community, we recognize Jesus. We're not just talking about sitting in lines of chairs as we are at the moment, as much as we love to sit in good lines. That's not what this is about. It's about when we gather around tables, when we gather in homes, when we have food together and share meals, when we open up and are vulnerable. It's in the connect time before the service. It's in our midweek groups. It's at Alpha, and it's at the Love Your Neighbor Cafe, and so many more places. It's at our big church lunches. Have you signed up for the next big church lunch? It's only a few weeks ago. The computer is on at the back after the service. Head back there and sign up. But it's not just about what we do with each other. It's also what we do with those outside of our church. It's we recognize Jesus when we go beyond our comfort zone and we start to invite others in. Those we don't know so well and complete strangers. And they start to recognize Jesus in us and the life which he gives us, life in all its fullness, because that is what we carry, that is what we see, and that is what we take with us. This is why when we come to Alpha, the first thing we do each week is eat together. It's why as a church, we regularly have our big Sunday lunches after the service. Not because we need to raise a bit more money, as much as we do, that's not why we come together. Not because we really love using a good slow cooker, as much as we do, that's not why we come together. But because to eat together, we have to become a little bit more vulnerable, a little bit more open, and a little bit more honest. We start to become family, and family is where we recognize Jesus. We've spent the last few weeks looking at what it means to come and eat together, to be a family that invites each other and those around us to come together with Jesus, to encounter him. We have an amazing opportunity to put this into practice over the coming weeks with our fireworks service this coming Sunday, with our Christmas services in December. This is a season of invitation. And so the question is, who are you going to invite? How are we looking to be a community that gathers round tables with each other, with the other, with strangers, so that Jesus is recognized and people find life? Next week is our fireworks service at the 4:15. There'll be no 6:15 service here, but we will all be heading over to St. Faith's in the West End and having a service followed by fireworks and food, and we cannot wait. Maybe you could invite a friend. Maybe invite them round beforehand to your house, have a little bit of fun, have some dinner or some tea with them, and then come to the fireworks service together. Or maybe you could invite a neighbor round for coffee. Maybe talking about Alpha is definitely a few steps down the road, but you could just get to know them, see how they're doing. What are their needs? Maybe you could join that midweek group that you keep putting off joining because, you'll do it next week, it's fine. Sign up at the back after the service. Maybe you could come and help at the Love Your Neighbor Cafe on Thursdays and get to know those who come along, build some community. The youth weekend away is coming up in the new year. Who could you invite from your school? Who actually would never come to something like that, but would love to come to something which is focused around like outward bounds and adventure? And Alpha is starting in the new year too. Start praying now. Who can you invite? We recognize and encounter Jesus when we stop and come together as family. Who are you going to invite to join us? Amen.